Hey everybody, this is Perch. I don't get frustrated by too much, but one of the things I do get frustrated about is digital. And the main reason is because a lot of people flounder around trying to figure out something that has already been figured out, that isn't that hard, that people overcomplicate for reasons that honestly I can't tell you. Some of it's nepotism, some of it's just people being stubborn about the way things are and not wanting to change. But a bigger part is just mystifying to me, particularly when you have clear examples of how digital should be done in comics, where it's successful, and why the biggest fight around digital is a stupid one. And that fight, very specifically, is that people who are collectors, people who like print comics, will never go to digital, and digital is bad and wrong, and they won't do it. Why is that a stupid fight? It's true. There are definitely people like that. I'm not saying there aren't. I'm not saying that those people are stupid either. They're not. They know what they like, and they should keep buying what they like. They should keep consuming things the way they like. No, no, no. That's not the stupid part. The stupid part is thinking that the digital customer and the print collector customer are the same person. They're not. And the longer that people argue about the topic, the more we waste time. The US model, to break it down, is what I like to call we don't know what to do. Because it's clear the people in the US do not know what to do when it comes to digital. And you can see the trap in the way they produce comics. They create some source, they create the source comic the exact same way they've been creating it for the last 50 plus years. It has not changed much. Granted, they don't have to FedEx printed copies around anymore. You can scan things. They can use Zoom to have writers' conferences and other things. But by and large, the process of creating comics has not changed. And when the comic is created, it gets shuttled off to the comic shop. And that's usually the point that the publisher stops caring about what happens. It goes off to the customer at that point. The comic shop has to sell it, but the publishers made their money. They're off to do other things. And one of the things that Marvel and DC and most US companies do is they say we can make a little bit of extra coin by tossing it out on digital. But therein is the exact trap. First, the platform that the comic goes to is not one that the publisher owns. They're going off to Comixology or some other location, which means they're treating it in much the same way as the comic shop. They're not invested in the outcome. They're just hoping for, I don't know, 5%, 10%, who knows? They're looking for upside. They're looking for more money. But nobody really cares what happens there at the publisher level. The comic's already been made. They view this as extra. And guess what? Everybody can tell that, and that's why it doesn't work. Then they also print them as collections. They print them as graphic novels, and that does work better. Some people don't like to pick up floppies, and it's a better value, better bargain, convenient in one place. Maybe they like the hardcover, who knows? But it goes off to a graphic novel or to a trade or whatever it happens to be, omnibuses, and that sells, and that works great. But again, the publisher just keeps churning out the same source material the way they've done. Now, as you can tell, there are obvious common sense problems with this model. The source comic isn't made with digital in mind. They're not thinking about that platform. Even when DC does their digital first initiatives, they're still thinking about a regular comic. They're thinking this is going to be printed someday. They don't think about this as a unique platform. It doesn't work for the customers in a lot of cases because they're marketing and they're pushing to the exact same audience. And this audience is saying, why should I pay again for digital? Or why should I pay the same price for digital? I don't own it. I don't hold it. Why is it the same cost? It shouldn't be. And then you get into questions of who owns the digital comic in this scenario. Is it rented? Can it change later? And because digital is always late, in particular here I'm talking about the Marvel Unlimited and those kinds of series, because it's late, piracy is rampant. I mean, in addition to the obvious cost problem that generates piracy, but another big reason people pirate is because they can get it right away. With digital costs being the same, it's never going to move anywhere. And then this sets up a scenario where the comic book shops see digital as a threat. They don't see it as part of their ecosystem. They don't see it as driving business into them. They see it as something to compete with. And collectors also see digital as a threat. They see it as a threat to their well-being, how they like comics. And because there's no real money, publishers continue to care about digital last. They all tell themselves, and I've heard this directly from people in Marvel, that they will absolutely care about digital when it starts making more money. Well, guess what? If you don't care about it, it's not going to make more money. Now, I want to contrast this with Japan. In Japan, you had a very different mentality, and we'll get into some of the history there in a minute, but this is how it works today. The source comic is largely assessed based on the creator output, what they can produce, how fast they are, the story pace, the marketability, and whatever the destination format is in mind. It still goes multiple places, but it's going to be basically fit and change depending on whether it's going to go to digital or whether it's going to go to print. And before you say, well, wait a minute, that's a lot more work. It's actually the opposite. It's less work because they steer creators to the platforms that are going to work better for them. That tends to generate a higher level of output. It's cost effective. And you can still collect things in the newsstand, which is very healthy and very active even today. And you can continue to put things in collections that go off to bookshops. And that's why you see manga really exploding here in the US. It's doing great. But simultaneously, not down the road, not as an afterthought, the digital landscape is kept extremely healthy. This digital landscape is built completely on a subscriber model, not a collector model. And most importantly, it allows you to go global with almost no cost, and they can do it instantly. Now, of course, this model works great. The source model fits the platform. The collector market is still catered to. They don't have to take less. They still get everything they always wanted. But the digital market gets a product that fits them. And this creates no war between print and digital fans. You have people just consuming what they want to consume in the way they want to. You don't have to choose. You don't have to give up something. The print product has unique value. It remains relevant. Shonen Jump, the big other collections, the comics, the newsstand, it is at an effective cost price. There's a lot of promotion and things that you only get in that collection. And by contrast, the digital product stays day and date. It isn't an afterthought. They have Discord servers now open so people can chat and they build a community. The people running this, most importantly, actually understand technology. They had people come in from SoftBank, from KDDI, and from other mobile platforms who were actually technologists who helped build this. They didn't take some person who all they knew was print or maybe had no real concept of technology, throw a hat on them and say, congratulations, now figure it out for us. They actually hired in experts to help them do this. And most importantly, Japan started right away. They started when mobile and digital were in their infancy, so they had time to get it right. And they stumbled plenty in this process. But now it's clicking quite well. I want to reinforce because this is the problem that hangs a lot of people up, including people who may be listening to this video right now. There's a print customer and there's a digital customer. The print customer likes, they're often collector people. They like to hold the comic. They like that feel. They're concerned about edits that come digitally. They do care about ownership. And generally, they like things the way they are. They just want more of it. Meanwhile, the digital customer is new. That customer likes the convenience of digital. They're often, in many cases, newer to the properties. They have embraced digital technology long before they came to comics. They don't really care about ownership, and they like to hop properties. This is a customer who's a lot more fickle when it comes to collecting and loving a certain thing. They tend to hop around. Here's the key. These are not the same people. And so every time there's an argument about, I won't go to digital or I won't go to print, nobody's asking you to. And only a truly stupid company would put people in that position. And here, I guess I have to be fair, Marvel and DC often does. So yeah, those companies are acting dumb because these are very different audiences. They're not the same. They don't need to be in conflict with each other, and they're going to consume products differently. And only an idiot would try and combine them for all kinds of reasons, but from a pure business reason. These are two different markets you can grow and make money off of. And by trying to replace one with the other, you are cannibalizing one of your business opportunities. You are cutting off your future growth. This is stupid. These people don't need to be the same people. Sometimes, by the way, you do have a person going from one to the other. You have a print collector who gives up on collecting and likes the convenience of digital. You often have digital customers who are newer to properties who decide they'd like to have some ownership. They would like to go to print. People do cross back and forth. but they are different audiences to market to. They're not the same person simultaneously. And here's the key: Japan, and frankly, every other company that has been successful in digital understands this, but not here in the US. Now, fun fact: Shueisha, who produces Shonen Jump, in the 90s, they saw a very clear picture that print sales were declining, and they were worried about it. They'd made a lot of money off manga, and they were very concerned. They knew that they needed to get to new markets. However, and this is really key, they also believed that even though the print sales were declining, eventually it would hit a bottom, and that bottom was still money they wanted. They didn't want to walk away from it completely. They wanted to continue to get cash. They realized that digital was necessary for a few of their customers who were abandoning their platform. But more importantly, digital was a brand new market. It was a way to talk to new customers and get new money. They did not look at digital as quick, we've got to come up with something new before print burns down. They believed print would drop and then stop, level off, plateau, and then keep going. And so they were smart enough to realize that whatever their digital solution needed to be, it needed to be additive. It couldn't subtract print, or they'd run into the worst possible problem where if they didn't get the digital adoption immediately, they would lose more of their print customers and go out of business. Shueisha set a cost at $2 per month in 2019 for the Shonen Jump mobile app, or Mobile Plus, Manga Plus. Today, this has what they say 5 million paying customers, active subscribers. This is a revenue stream of about 120 million a year. And their projections say that they're going to be at 20 million subscribers by 2023. They're growing actively in Japan, but they're growing just as actively, and in some cases more, in other regions around the world. If you're keeping track at home, that's 480 million in digital sales alone. That's not including their business in print, licensing, merchandising, graphic novels, and all the rest. And this 480 million, if they truly can get there, will be heavily profitable. There's only localization costs in global distribution. They don't need to worry about shipments, printers, any of that kind of noise. It's all digital. This is a great business for them. This is all in excess of print, graphic novels, and merchandising, and I can't say that enough. And what's most important, collectors can still buy print comics. They can still buy collections. They can still buy trades. Nothing has changed for them. That revenue stream is intact. And guess what? It's growing. Now, why in the world is it growing? Because you now have more and more people with eyes on their products through digital. So they've created a very nice method for those customers to come to print. But wait, you say, Japan is culturally different from the US. It will never work here. It's true. Every region absolutely has a unique culture. But this is not culture. This is business. And it's clear from the path to mobile gaming, there is a huge market for digital in the US. We've had this argument before. Many people said gamers, people who are used to console gaming, would never go to mobile. Clearly, with the way the money has gone and the business, mobile gaming is incredibly viable. People will do it. It has nothing to do with what's popular in Japan and what's popular here. It has nothing to do, and we'll get to it in a minute, about people who ride in trains versus cars and all the rest. Yes, Japan has a different culture from the US, but this isn't about culture. It's about markets and business, and they are separate. And the people who throw up the cultural argument aren't thinking this through, and frankly, don't have a lot of experience with the culture of Japan anyway. This is new. The digital market, particularly for the US, is new, and it's absolutely stupid to ignore it. But who cares about a real digital business plan in the US? Well, the publisher should, but do they? No. The publisher continues to make and ship comics just the way they have. They give a lot of noise to reaching new audiences and new markets. We got to change the characters around, but they're using the exact same methods to get there. They are basically selling off their fate, their future, their success to others. The comic shop certainly doesn't care about a real digital business plan in the US. In fact, they're just rooting for it to fail. And Comixology, the digital platform of choice in the US, is a terrible person to care about this. Why? Well, first off, it's an absolutely insignificant part of Amazon's business. All it intends is to create an IP farm for things to be converted to Prime. And even there, they don't really care. Otherwise, Comixology sells what they're given. They get comics, they pump it out. They are not invested in the outcome. So, in other words, in the US, nobody cares. If Shueisha's estimates do come true, if they get to that 20 million subscribers by 2023, with digital alone, they will exceed DC's yearly revenue, and they'll be very close to pass Marvel. It's likely that when you combine in print and graphic novel sales and everything else, they will far exceed Marvel. But this is digital alone, and that's going to be a massive, massive gap for Marvel to try and bridge. If you hate digital and you are a print collector, then you should absolutely hope that Shueisha's approach happens in the US. They managed to make two very different markets happy by caring about them separately. The people who like print and are collectors in Japan love this model because they're going to continue to get comics. Shueisha is stable. Manga in Japan is a stable industry for a lot of people, for a lot of readers. And if you're a person who likes collecting, stability is a good thing for you. It means the entire system is not going to collapse. Now, as I said before, to be fair, what are the cultural differences? Well, again, it's less culture. But Japan did have advantages to making this plan work that the US does not have. The population is a commuter population, meaning on the go reading was preferred. That was going to make moving to digital for many people easier. And actually, right there, I used the wrong words. I fell into a little bit of my own trap. It's not moving to digital, it's growing digital, it's creating something for people to do. A lot of people that picked up Shueisha, and they've said this directly, in Japan, a lot of people who consumed digital content in Japan were new to manga. It wasn't like they were print collectors who suddenly moved over because it was convenient. It was people who hadn't been reading this stuff at all and wanted something to do on the train. Technology is cheaper and it's more widely adopted in Japan. It's absolutely true. That is a barrier here in the US where tablets are very expensive. And Japan also did this. They acclimated to a poor experience very early. In 2004, 2005, they were already consuming a lot of manga on a phone, and these were terrible, terrible flip phones. They were unpleasant to read in. But what that meant is as the iPhone came out, as it improved, as Android devices, as all these things changed in Japan, it meant that the resolution, the screen quality, the experience got better and better and better. And so over the last 10 years, the Japanese have enjoyed the innovation of digital, as has Korea and many other regions. Whereas in the US, we never got started. We never had to go through that learning process. In the US, customers are conditioned to believe that digital equals inferior. And this is a disaster for any kind of conversion or growth of the business. As long as people in the US believe that digital is a poor product, they're unlikely to buy into it. And that's going to continue to cause major problems for growing this business. The US is now more than 10 years behind with no real signs of catching up. The approach to digital is still based around basically, let's ship the same thing to a few places. Let's make our money anywhere we can. It's just a channel to us. Good news, we've got Diamond and we can throw some stuff on Comixology. Problem solved. That is destined to fail over time. It's absolutely going to fail as a digital strategy, and it's likely to take the publisher down eventually. Many in the US hope that the all-you-can-eat or Netflix model will save digital for the US. But here's the bad news. There are really only two outcomes there. One, it always lags behind day and date, and thus it's always seen as inferior. Secondary, piracy will continue to go. People are not going to hop over or convert. They're going to get spoiled by their comics, weeks before they can actually consume them. And while some people will adopt, most won't. The other outcome, if we just ignore it and let things proceed, is much worse. It means that they do make things day and date, And it basically, overnight, starts to suck 80% of the revenue out of comics. This is what Shueisha feared, why they were in such a hurry to get things going and make a good plan. If they go day and date with digital and make it cheap, say do that $2 a month model that Shueisha did, it is going to destroy the direct market. Yes, there will absolutely be people who will go in and collect and buy the print copies. But many of those customers going in and buying the print copies will not understand why the exact same comic is, basically free or at $2 a month close to free for everything you can read, and they'll just start to abandon the hobby completely. Yes, collectors are still going to go in, still want their print comics, but the industry cannot survive on those people alone. The industry today survives on collectors and casual readers and people trying to get into comics, all of those things. And some comic shops may reach out and say, well, that's not true. My shop is all about collectors. That's fine. I'm not talking about your shop. I'm talking about the publisher. The publisher can't survive. You may continue to do a fine business for 20 or 30 years specializing in old back issue comics. That's great for you. But the big publishers will not survive in that process. They will try and move to digital and try and build this audience up, but they won't be able to build it fast enough to make up for the collapse. That is a major threat. That's exactly what Shueisha was worried about and why they got things moving very quickly and why they saw these businesses as separate. And that's why in the US, they also have to see these businesses as separate. Because if you start to cannibalize one, i.e., your platform, in favor of the other, it will disappear faster than you build the new one up. So, what should the US do? Well, they're in a no, bluntly, they're in a bind. They are behind, badly behind. The first thing they need to do is they need to hire people who actually understand digital. They need to stop relying on Amazon and Comixology to do the work for them and fix their problem. They need to create a single hub app, like Shueisha did and others, that they control. Meaning Marvel needs to fully own that experience, end to end. The technology, how it runs, how it's distributed, how the content gets into it, how it's marketed, all of it. They need to market everything they do that way. They need to basically, and this is going to be very tough for them, they need to give away early issues of series for free. Shueisha gives the first 3 issues away for free inside the comic. This gets people hooked on a concept. And then when they start charging the subscription price, it works. And bad news to Marvel and DC, to compete in this market now, you're going to have to charge a low price. If you'd started 10 years ago, you probably could have gotten away with a much higher price. But today, it's going to have to be under $5. Keep your digital content episodic. Don't worry for the moment about going day and date. Just don't worry, but start creating some series that are going onto that digital platform that are coming out every week at about 8 pages or less. That's what you need to do. Once the market stabilizes, then get in there and start putting in full comics. But for a period of time, we're probably talking 2 to 5 years, probably closer to 5. Live in this episodic content model. By the way, as a complete aside, this is going to be better for you in how you're hiring talent, writers and artists. This is going to be a much easier model for some people to adopt to, rather than throwing them to the deep end of trying to get print comics out every month. And last but not least, sink more effort into real value for collectors. Not variant cover schemes, not incentive programs, but actual things that make the print comic meaningful. The biggest of these would be a good quality story. But there are other things you can do. You're going to actually have to think about that market as new. Most importantly here, you need to be patient. Realize that you're at least 10 years behind, you've been listening to the wrong people, and you're losing. Remember, again, the digital market is not the same as a collector's market. Stop thinking about them the same, stop being threatened by each other, and actually get 2 business lines going. That's the only way to be successful here. Digital doesn't need to be something that you're afraid of. It doesn't need to be something that you attack. It doesn't need to be something that you dig your heels on and say, I'll never do it. I refuse to do it. Know what you like. If you like print comics, cool. Stick with it. But again, a lot of this video is not aimed at you. It's aimed at the publishers. The publishers have to start looking at these markets separately. And as collectors and fans, we need to start accepting that there are multiple markets. We need to start demanding that the publishers and the creators of these comics Start serving them both. None of this is that hard. None of what I've said is particularly magic. At least I don't think so. But it seems to continue to elude people who increasingly feel like they're just basically taking care of something headed to the grave, as opposed to actually trying to grow something. We see a lot of videos and a lot of commentary about types of content, ideologies, all the rest. But to me, this is the absolute biggest miss. It's the biggest screwed up situation in comics because it's about business. It's about clearly growing and sustaining your market. And instead, people seem very content to just keep circulating things around the way they always have been and just run them into the ground. That's no solution at all. I hope this was entertaining for you. I hope food for thought. I hope somebody in the publisher is listening to this. If you're a creator, like pass it along. None of what I've said here is meant to be cruel. It's not meant to be mean. It's not meant to attack. It's simply meant to say, look, there is a business opportunity here. By and large, people have been chasing it absolutely wrong. And at this point, you're just waiting for somebody else to come in and save you. And nobody's going to. The most likely scenario that's going to happen is Shueisha or some of these other companies are going to come in and take the market from you, not save you. For the collectors and fans out there, relax. Digital is not a threat to you. And I get it. You like print. And guess what? You should keep getting print. In fact, you should get better print than what you've gotten. It can be good for everybody. It is in other regions, and it can be here too. Hey, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Comic Perch. I'm on, you can send me an email, comics with an S, perch at gmail.com. Most importantly, and I really mean this, thanks for listening.